Okay, well, thank you so much, Kendra, for volunteering to be here and taking some time out of, I'm sure, your very busy schedule to have a conversation with us. And so, for those of you who might be listening for the first time, this is the power of Atlantic female leadership. And I'm interviewing the most recent winners of Atlantic Business Magazine's top 25 most powerful women in Canada. And so that is how we got here. That is how we are speaking today, because Kendra MacDonald is the CEO of Canada's Ocean Supercluster, which I know we're going to talk about. It's a big deal and definitely something that we need to learn more about. And, you're responsible for the accelerated development and commercialization of innovation that's going to be solving some of the biggest challenges in the ocean. So there's so many interesting words that I've been learning as I've been doing some research here. Obviously, the ocean is near and dear to our heart here in Atlantic Canada. It's the reason why I moved back, because after living away from the ocean, I think you begin to miss it and you think, I don't know if I can be apart from it. So welcome. Thank you for being here and taking your time out to speak with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I see the poster behind you. Let's start with that. What is an ocean supercluster? Because I was saying to you, my husband and I were talking about that. We're like, what is that? I was like, I don't know, but it sounds cool. So explain that to us and for anybody else.
Yeah. So maybe I'll start at a high level. So 5 years ago, Canada, the government of Canada created what was called the Innovation Supercluster Initiative. And really, so Canada struggles with its innovation scores. So we have world-class research. We certainly have world-class research in ocean, in pockets all across the country. But when it comes to commercializing that research, when it comes to industry investment in technology, when it comes to productivity, we really struggle and we are declining in terms of our performance globally. And so the federal government really looked at what could we do differently. And so this program was sort of born out of that. And so it both focuses on investment in industry, which often we invest in our research institutions. So we can only invest in companies, we invest in industry. It was really, and it's a matching program. So we are trying to help encourage investment, and we are really a matching program. So, you put your money in, we still want you to invest in innovation, but we are de-risking those dollars by investing up to 50% in your project to be able to help with that. So the other thing that it did was they said no more than 5. So they had almost 50 applications and they really chose 5. And so the 5 superclusters at the time, the original 5, were meant to really be those places where Canada thought that they could compete globally, and that investing at that level would really help us accelerate and be better innovators, so change our reputation as an innovation nation and be globally competitive. So Canada likes to, we're certainly viewed on the world stage, we like to be inclusive, we like to give a little bit to everybody. We take a real peanut butter approach to how we invest in innovation. So this was really trying to change that. And so Ocean was one of the 5. And it was sort of born out of Atlantic Canada because of the huge concentration of ocean activity that happens in Atlantic Canada. But what's important to note is the ocean economy globally is set to double by 2030. And that sort of started in 2016 with an OECD finding. So that's $3 trillion US, so close to $4 trillion in terms of the global opportunity. It will outpace the growth of the broader global economies. It was one of the fastest growing sectors globally in terms of the opportunity. It's also very tied to climate. So you think about 70% of the planet is covered in water. A lot of that is not currently explored. So we know less about ocean than we know about space. So huge opportunity in terms of frontiers of discovery. And it's also very tied to carbon. And it actually absorbs more carbon than the rainforests do. And so we're seeing it. We're seeing the impact on the Arctic. We're seeing the significant weather extreme weather events that we've been having. A lot of that is tied to ocean. So I find it really exciting because it is an economic opportunity, but it is also, oh, did I lose you?
Nope,
Good.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It is an economic opportunity, but it is also very tied to our climate and net zero goals as well. So
Fascinating.
a bit of rambling, but there it is. So,
No,
we're
I mean,
focused on
yeah.
we're focused on growing the ocean economy for Canada. We're focused on building an inclusive workforce, and we're really focused on also digitalizing the economy and really changing our culture and how we do business in the ocean to make us much more collaborative so we can learn from each other and sort of accelerate our growth and competitiveness on the global stage.
And it sounded like sustainability is very important as well.
Yeah, so it's really for us health and wealth, right, of the ocean. So how do we balance constantly in what we do? Certainly not doing any more harm, but also kind of leaving as much as possible to solutions leave us better off. So a lot of what we would invest in, or what we've invested in today, would be like sustainable seafood solutions. So how do we get better at predicting where the fish are so that we use less gas? How do we get smarter nets? How do we reduce bycatch? How do we, in aquaculture, improve inspections, environmental monitoring, reduce die-off, introduce more technology? There's several projects in the decarbonization of shipping space. So whether that is electrification of boats, so introducing more batteries like we're trying to do with cars, trying to do the same thing with boats. So how do we get farther on battery? How do we change the coating of the hulls? So actually ships, they collect a lot of things on the hull. And so biofouling. So how do you actually put a different coating that the more that you can reduce what they collect, or that will reduce the drag, right? So you're able to use less diesel as a result. And so we've seen some good solutions there, and also biofuels. So the whole space of, we have a project that has a transitionary fuel, so they're an additive. You don't have to change the ship, so they can be used right now to be able to reduce the diesel consumption. And then longer term solutions that actually change the fuel that is being used on the ship to be able to reduce emissions. Worker safety is another one. So whether you put wearables on the worker to be able to monitor them, there's lots of health, sort of privacy and cyber sort of pieces to that. But you know, how do we get better information? Mariner safety and just overall health of mariners has been an increased focus, especially with some of the pandemic experience. Also getting workers off the water. So the more that you can create a more inclusive workforce. If you change the jobs from being on water to being off water, now you can attract, you know, a different worker that maybe doesn't want a career living on the water, but they can be off the water and monitor and communicate offshore. And then the last would be environmental monitoring. So Canada's got some significant strength in terms of sensors and UAVs and digital twin, which is sort of data collection and decision making. So we've got good capability in that space that we're investing in. So anyway, those are, and then inclusion. We build an inclusive workforce. We've got several projects looking at Indigenous workers pivoting from a career outside of ocean into ocean with our Indigenous career pivot pilot. We've got the Blue Futures Pathways, which developed a portal to try to raise awareness for students as to the opportunities that exist in ocean. And then we've got Project Ocean Allies, which actually looks at barriers to entry into the ocean economy for underrepresented groups and try to figure out how to tackle some of those. So, all right, that's a lot. That's what we do.
I mean, just a few things. It sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm already thinking of my daughters and this industry and thinking how exciting it is, you know, for them and the future of women in this industry as well. So I know that when we first spoke, we talked a little bit about how you got here and your journey to being in the role that you're in. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I actually started as, so I'm trained as an accountant. I started as a co-op student. I did a commerce degree. I got a job with one of the big accounting firms. I worked at Deloitte for almost 25 years. And so I had kind of a very traditional journey through the accounting world. I did travel quite a bit. So I worked in Australia, I worked in Hong Kong, I started in Ottawa, I worked in Montreal. I moved to St. John's, where I met my husband and ultimately stayed. But the work that I was doing, was very focused. I started as an auditor and an accountant. And then I got really interested in technology. So I moved into our technology practice and focused more on sort of processes versus the accounting itself. But then I got really interested in innovation. And so I'd always been, because technology, I think, is very tied to innovation, but really, Deloitte did a lot of work on future of Canada. So very tied to some of the themes that I talked about at the beginning. So looked at our productivity and found that our products, so this was early, I think 2013, 2014, they started doing this. So how vulnerable were we to technological disruption? How much exporting were we doing, which was something like 4%. Our companies, very few were focused on exporting. They looked at productivity. They looked at Canadian courage in business. There were several aspects, and it was right around when I was adopting my daughter. And so I think I was just paying a lot more attention to the country, right? She's adopted from Kazakhstan, so I'm bringing her to this country, and really cared about sort of what was happening in the country in terms of our economy. And so with participation in that, I got involved in our technology sector in Newfoundland, Labrador, became the chair of what is now TechNL, which was the Newfoundland and Labrador Association of Technology Industries. And then through that was introduced to this role and encouraged that if I really wanted to make a difference for the future of the country, here was a role that was really contributing to the future of our region and the future of our country. So I left after almost 25 years. I think I was a couple months short of being with the firm for 25 years. So it was a very big career switch. And I get asked a lot, sort of, how does an accountant end up running an ocean organization? But here we are.
So, the thing that, all of that stood out to me, but it seemed like there was a moment that a moment where you realized that you wanted to make an impact and you wanted to impact something in a certain way. You've talked about making an impact on the future of the country, and then just different key interests that you've had over your career. A lot of the women that I speak with are sort of looking up, I think, after a period of being, working really hard in their career and looking to make some sort of a transition, but not sure how, not sure if they're ready. Can I, should I, who am I to do that? Questioning a lot of things. So seems like you've had, a lot of different paths that you've traveled and, been interested in different things, which has led you to where you are right now. So what advice would you give to women who are, considering either up-leveling their career, wanting to get into senior leadership, or maybe are in senior leadership right now and are wondering, can I sustain this? Because it requires a significant amount of commitment. What are you seeing out there, and what advice might you have for women who are, in transition and looking to grow their careers right now? There was a lot of questions all at once, but hopefully you got it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm moving you around a little bit. My battery was about to die, and that would
that's okay. It was fun. It was like we were on a ride for a little bit. It was fun.
Middle of it, so
you were mimicking the ocean, right? That's the words. A
little bit of wave movement.
Yeah.
I think it's so I adopted as a single mother in terms of my daughter, and so I made a very conscious decision. I became a partner at Deloitte, and then I started on an adoption journey as a single mom. And so that was a very conscious work-life balance decision. Now I adopted my daughter. She also had a cleft lip and palate. So not only was I making a single mom decision, I was making a single mom with a health issue decision, which for those that have children, you don't know, but I was adopting a child. So I knew some of what I was signing up for. Since then, I met my husband, and my husband came with a son. And so I went from sort of being a single female partner in Montreal, downtown Montreal, to being a married, 2 kids in the suburbs of Newfoundland in about 3 years. So I think, we can be very self-limiting. So I think my first advice would be don't shy away from an opportunity because you feel like, I don't have enough qualifications, or I don't have enough experience, or, I've got all these other family commitments. I can tell you, my mother has dementia, so we're dealing with that. I talked about my daughter, I've got a family. So it's all about balance. And I think what's interesting with women is, like, we are very good at stay away from multitasking. My daughter does not like the word multitasking, but we manage multiple things. And what do they say? They say, give, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. I think that, we manage a number of things. Having said that, the pandemic was hard. And so I think that, I was not one of those people that learned a language and lost a bunch of weight and, found my Zen. And I really respect all the people that were able to do those things. Yeah. I was one of those women that was up at 4 o'clock in the morning so that I could get some work done before I dealt with homeschooling, so I could take a break in the middle of the day and then go walk the dog and then come back to my work at 6 o'clock at night after we dealt with dinner and all the other things that needed to happen. And that was hard and it was tiring. And so coming up for breath from that and saying, okay, what is next? What I have the energy for? I was just with a friend of mine, and she made a conscious decision to take a demotion so that she could be happier at work. And that is a very hard thing to do. It is certainly a hard thing to do within your own company. We would be much more likely to change companies, right? So that we manage in a whole new environment. But to be that in touch with what she valued, what mattered, how she wanted to spend her time, and to be in search of really what she wanted, I thought was really, really admirable. And so I think one of the hardest things for women that I have seen is, at all levels, being okay. So there's almost this constant voice of, I should want more, or I can't want more, or I'm going home and I shouldn't be going home, or I'm prioritizing my parents when I should be prioritizing my kids, when I should be prioritizing my job. Like there's just this constant, I'm always not where I think I should be. So calming that voice, really thinking through where you want to be, is really important. And then at the same time, if you want to be a leader, don't let all those other things be an excuse on that journey, would be the other thing. So that was a lot of convoluted advice, but maybe to boil it down, be okay with wherever you are and wherever you want to be. And if you want to be somewhere else, then don't find excuses to be there. Figure out the path to be able to get you there. And I think there's lots of organizations, there's lots of mentors, there's lots of people that can help you along that journey. And don't feel like, we are in a world where your education is less important than your skills and values. And so, think about what those skills and values are and where they can be applied, and then go for it.
Yeah. I think that trade-offs piece is really big. I think that at some point in our career, I'm sure you've gone through it, you described it, I've gone through it, your friends going through it, where you face some truths and you need to decide and maybe make some trade-offs in some things. And I think the more that you take on in your career, the more that you're going to be faced with that, because more responsibility, more complexity. I was also not that person during the pandemic, by the way. I think I probably worked the hardest I've ever worked in my life during that period in time, and didn't know burnout until I knew burnout after that. And so what I'm hearing though is that we have choice. And I think that that's something that we don't think that we have enough of, that we don't have the freedom to choose, that those choices are being made for us. But it's interesting. I was, this is an American piece of research, but McKinsey just released their Women in the Workplace study for this year. And they were talking about, I think they coined it the Great Breakup, which of course there is lots of discussion on the terminology that was used to describe women choosing to leave the workforce at historically high rates. And, whether that's leaving altogether or downshifting, there's something afloat There's something that's going on within our work environments. So what do you see in Atlantic Canada, your view on, sort of the status of women at work in Atlantic Canada? Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, so I think we are, we have lots of amazing female leaders in Atlantic Canada. So I think that's exciting because I think they provide a wide variety of role models.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more role models that we have, the more that other women can look up and say, you know what, I can do that too. And they're in all different sectors.
Yep.
And all different opportunities. I think having said that, mental health and psychological safety are really important topics right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, to the conversation around women and all that they were juggling in the pandemic, and not to say everyone was juggling in the pandemic, but I mean, you're closer to the research than me. The clear indication was, we've seen women researchers producing less. We have seen, the levels of burnout. We have seen women leaving the workforce. I think we are seeing the same types of things here. It really depends on what your overall support structure is. And I think, the bulk of caregiving, no matter the level of the woman, often falls to the woman. And so that is a reality, despite getting more female leaders, despite, some of the changes that we've seen in society overall. The bulk of the caregiving, whether it is a parent, whether it is a child, whether it is the dog. And so part of what we're seeing now is the desire for flexibility. So we are lucky at the Ocean Supercluster. Just challenge from a culture perspective, but to have everyone work from home. So if people need to go take the dog to the vet, or they need to pick up their children from school, or they need to work a different work day, we provide a lot of flexibility. I think that we are heading into a place where flexibility for everyone, but especially for women, to be able to manage multiple priorities will really matter in their job selection.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that right now, because of what we have been through and because of what's going on in the labor market, I don't think that there's ever been a better time to advocate for what you want, to have those conversations with your employer, because I really think that employers are listening in a way that they didn't listen before, and are more flexible and more open to innovative solutions to make the workplace work better for all. And I don't think that we can deny that the work experience of women is different than the work experience of men, because of what we're talking about here, which is caretaking roles and multiple roles that we juggle. Not that men don't, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's just a different experience because we are different. We have difference, right? And knowing more about that, I think, can be very helpful. Of course, women have choice. It saddens me to think that the only choice right now is to leave, or that's the dominant choice that's being made, is that I can't figure out how to make this work, so I'm out, I'm going somewhere else. And, when we talk about like quiet quitting and all of this things that are being discussed, on social media and in the conversations around workplace and engagement, it saddens me when it feels like that's the alternative. I'd like to see more of us having conversations about, how do we make the workplace work better for all of us? And I think it's a great time to do that. Yeah.
So I think part of it is we're tired. And so if people have the flexibility to take a break. So I've had more of my colleagues at senior levels say, you know what, I'm just going to take a few months off. I know I want to do something else, but I want to take a few months. I want to recover. I want to think about my options. I want to clean my plate and then figure out what I want to put back onto my plate. And for me, my word of the year for 2022 has been right sizing, thinking about the boards that I'm on, the organization, the things that I'm doing, the things that I need to be doing, the dinners I need to attend, state of my house, all of those things. How do I get them to? Because I love doing new things and I love new challenges. I love to say yes. But you got to balance that with, to your point, with burnout. So I have, a number of friends who have just really said, I'm not leaving forever, but I'm leaving for now because I need a rest. I've done all of this, we've gotten through it, and I need a rest. I think the other thing is what we've seen globally is the power of female leadership. So through the pandemic, when you look at countries that did really well during the pandemic, a number of them were led by women. And so I think that has changed some of the conversation, or certainly put a spotlight on the differences between men and women and how women lead in a crisis, right? And the empathy that they bring to situations and the powerful leadership skills that they have. So I think that combined with how far I think the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation has come over the last few years. You know, I was thinking the other day, I was on my first inclusion committee sort of 15 years ago. It was on the side of the desk. Now this is much more of a center stage, real area of focus. And so, you know, female leadership is really important. And yeah, I'll stop there. I had another point, but it'll come back to me.
No,
those are two good points.
They're two, but yeah, they're great ones. And so it's led me to a couple questions. But I agree. There's been a lot of really interesting research now, because before we didn't even have enough data about women in leadership because there was just so few of them. But now the research is coming out, and we're getting really rich studies around you know, what our superpower move are, what our competencies are. And we're seeing that it is a relational move, and that's the competency that we bring to the table, and how that was so important during a crisis, but also in terms of bringing forward some of the agenda around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and, you know, changing the workplace overall. So I think it's really, really interesting and very important.
Yeah, so maybe just a couple of other points now they've come back to me. So one is, you're right, as an employer, the biggest advice I've been given is this is the age of the employee. Right. So this is the time, if you
100%
want to be working and you just need something changed, you need to ask, right? So don't feel like you should just change employers in terms of doing that. I mean, there is the most flexibility ever in terms of where you live, in terms of what your day looks like, in terms of the benefits that you're looking for. This is really the time of the employer in terms of, the time of the employee. In terms of that. So I think that's a really important consideration as well. And we have never been arguably in a place with so much choice. Right. So now that you can work across the country, to some extent, you can work around the world. You know, I think that there's just so much opportunity to be able to look for roles and participate in the workforce. So I think, you know, the people also shouldn't feel like, on the one hand, you want to be able to find ways to be able to stay in your existing role, but also not feel, I think that's another reason women are more comfortable leaving. It's like, I can take a break because I know when I want to come back to the workplace, there's going to be something new and interesting for me. Whereas before it might have been, well, I'm not going to leave because who knows if I can get another job. I think that attitude has fundamentally changed as well. Yeah.
I think the thing about my concern with it, and I love this piece around I'm taking a rest and cleaning my plate. I think that's such a great metaphor. I want some of that too. I'm like, that sounds good. Taking a rest and cleaning my plate. I want to do that too. My concern is if we aren't engaging, if we aren't having the conversation and then going somewhere else, it's like you're not learning the skill that's going to be required to possibly have a conversation somewhere else. Like you're kind of you're porting that with you, as opposed to doing the work inside the organization that you're currently in. But yeah, all for taking a break, all for knowing how to establish boundaries and step back and recalibrate. Sounds like it's a great recalibration and what's happening right now. So I was talking with a friend of mine too. We were talking about like purpose and vision, and feeling like there might be a little bit of a deficit in that right now with leaders, you know, kind of not sure what direction I want to go in. We were kind of getting all jazzed about that, thinking, okay, well, that's a place where we can support, you know, that's what we're interested in. And we recognized it's not the time right now because we're healing and we're recalibrating, and we need to do that work first and kind of get our house in order before we can really start to articulate clear purpose and vision for where it is that we want to go. So I feel that energetically, like that's what's going on with a lot of leaders right now. And it's important that we don't move too fast, too quickly, even though the pull for purpose and vision and leadership is so needed right now. We can't spend too long. waiting.
Well, I think the other thing too is we've come out of a pandemic, but now we're dealing with inflation and we're dealing with the geopolitical environment. And so, we're continuing to deal with uncertainty, and we're continuing to figure out what some of those permanent new trends are, right? So, as much as it's hard to have a purpose and vision conversation, I think part of why we're seeing this, I want to clean my plate and I want to take a break, is because I want to recalibrate on what's important for me. And we've now gone through this big moment and said, okay, where do I want to be spending my time? And I am much less tolerant. I'm going to talk to, again, lots of women who pre-pandemic, you were going to all these different events, right? All these different dinner events, all these different fundraising events. You're just out all the time. And now, as those have come back online saying, I don't think I need to be at that. I don't think I need to do that. I think I need more time for me. But I think that is still settling, and not in a world that is settled. And I don't think we're going to be in that settled world for maybe ever, but certainly for a long time. And so that's hard.
It is. It's very interesting to sit back and observe. And, I also love having a word of the year. I always have a word for the year. So you said you had a word for 2022. Do you know what your word for 2023 is yet?
Depends how far I get in my right sizing for 2022. It might need to carry into 2023. So no, not quite. That's usually my kind of Christmas breath moment as I think through where I want to go for 2023. So yeah, not quite there yet.
Yeah, I look forward to the new year and having it's like a thing that I've done for years too, where I sit down and I think about the year, take stock of the year and what happened, and sort of vision cast a word that I want to wrap around the new year. I think I've forgotten what I said. I think honestly, 2022, I said it. Who knows? I'd have to go back and look at my notes somewhere, but probably is a good time to recalibrate for me too, because it's been quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey when he talks about highly effective people, this idea of the rocks in the sand. Yeah. And so I spend time thinking through, like, what are my rocks, right? What are the things that I want to accomplish this year that are non-negotiable? And then fill in the sand around. Otherwise, the sand equally fills the jar. If you're not, I'm making that a very short version of that. If you're not familiar with it, I would encourage you to check it out. But I read that years ago. And so I really think about, from a family perspective to a work perspective to a personal development perspective, what are the things that I want to accomplish that are definitely the rocks, and then fill in the rest around.
Yeah, I love that concept. I learned that as well. It's always stuck with me, and it's pretty easy. He talks about the whirlwind too, and like how quickly things can take over if we're not really thinking proactively. So important. Okay, well, one last nugget of wisdom that you would like to impart on the women who are listening. I just love speaking with you, Kendra. You're so natural and just I feel very comfortable around you. I feel like I could talk with you all day. So you're really open and, very vulnerable with everything that you're sharing. So I just want to appreciate you for that and telling us a bit of your story. Yeah, really refreshing. So if a woman was wanting to, build a career in Ocean Supercluster or, in that field, what would you say to her?
Yeah, so I mean, first thing is I would say, great.
Yeah.
we need everyone, right? This is we're looking at taking the ocean economy in Canada from about 40 billion or 39 billion in 2019 to 220 billion by 2035. It's about 350,000 people now. So think about the headcount that we need to be able to, even with all the automation in the world, what that is in terms of talent and growth. So there is really not, from social sciences to marine biology to technology and data science, there's just so many opportunities in the ocean economy. And it's such an exciting, I think, place to be. It matters to the future of the planet. It matters to breathing. It matters to leisure. Like, there's just so many pieces it touches. So don't hesitate, I think, to explore. There's lots of increasing number of resources that are out there. And so I would strongly encourage you to check it out. I think that I was surprised. I mean, the ocean for me was always a place I went for calm. It was
Right.
always a place I went for vacation. But
Mhm.
when I got in this role, I was just astounded by the opportunities that exist in the ocean economy. And I guess the other piece of advice, and this is not ocean economy specific, but I heard it the other day, and someone said, make the decision that is right for you in your heart, because
Mhm.
whatever it is, you're going to be criticized anyway. So
Mhm.
I thought that was a great piece of advice, right? You got to do what's right for you at whatever level. And then, just someone's going to criticize you anyway. And then you got to be okay.
Ain't that the truth? I think I had a conversation with somebody, we were trying to remember yesterday where this came from, but I remember hearing somewhere, you will always either be too much or not enough for everybody. So it reminds me of that. So you might as well just do whatever, you want to do, like, as you said, like kind of what makes your heart sing, because it's meant to be for you and for, hopefully having a positive impact on others. But yeah, that's really, really important. Well, I want to thank you so much. This was awesome. I'm just so happy to have got to spend a bit of time with you, and we're very lucky to have you. So thank you for doing what you do. We really are. We're very lucky to have you representing female leaders, being an incredible role model, and doing such important work that's going to benefit all of us and is benefiting all of us every single day. So thank you for being called to serve. And thank you for what it is that you're doing for Canada and specifically Atlantic Canada. So thank you so much, Kendra.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Okay, enjoy the rest of your weekend and good luck cleaning your plate.
Oh, thank you. All right, take care.
Okay, take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.